Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Bienvenidos al Tiempo a la Verdad. El tema del show hoy son las drogas, su daño y malas consecuencias. So welcome back to A Time for Truth. The theme for today are drugs, their damage, and the bad consequences that they have in general. So, Jorge, por favor, ponga la primera imagen. We're going to put an image on the screen for you. And here we go. So, marijuana. It is a growing risk as society grows more tolerant. And here you see Dr. Nora Volkov, who's director of the National Institute of Health, and her comment, which is people are frequently misinformed about the marijuana danger and its addictive nature. She's the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Y aquí pueden ver la conclusión de la doctora Nora Volkov, que es directora del Consejo sobre nuestra salud en los Estados Unidos, que dice que la marihuana adictiva y no es buena para nosotros. Entonces, si eso es la verdad, ¿por qué la están legalizando? Hay una confusión. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, if that's the case, and the director of our health in our country, Dr. Nora Volkov, is stating that marijuana causes damage and is deleterious, then is there some kind of confusion because we're legalizing? This is what we're going to cover in tonight's show. Very important for our families. So we're very honored to have with us tonight Mr. Michael DeLeon, a successfully reformed former addict who had gang involvement, who spent 12 years in a prison and halfway houses for the homicide and the acts that he perpetrated. But since his release, he's earned 3 associate's degrees, a bachelor's degree in business management with a minor in criminal justice, a CADC educational certificate, and is in the process of obtaining more education on tobacco certification from the University of Kentucky School of Nursing, and a master's degree in social work at Liberty University's School of Social Work, as well as pursuing his LCADC. Mr. DeLeon attributes his success to his loving wife, Darla, who we just saw there. And with Darla, they've had 3 kids and have 5 grandchildren. Mike is the #1 presenter and #1 book school orator in the United States of America on drug education. He's the founder of Steered Straight, a nonprofit organization formed in 2007 upon his release, and it's designed to carry an important message to youth on the extreme dangers of drugs, on gang involvement, and associated criminal activity. Steer Straight's program reaches out to children, teens, and young adults with a message of reality about life choices and consequences. He also is founder of Stay in Your Lane Media, founded in 2012, and has produced 4 award-winning documentaries. He's also founded the Recovery Army. The Recovery Army's mission is to recruit as many people as possible to wage this educational, informative war on this pandemic of drug addiction. And Mr. DeLeon says, I don't want to just affect one kid, I want to affect them all in our country. And here you see him with Marshall Faulk, famous NFL Pro Bowler, NFL Super Bowl champion. And I want to welcome him to our show engineer. If you can put him on the screen, and let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Michael DeLeon.
Hello.
Welcome, Mike.
Hello, Dr. Fionkov. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to have you. You know, I wanted you to have a chance to introduce yourself and give the viewers a little background on why you do what you do and its importance.
Well, obviously, my story has become my fuel. A lot of times people think their story is their fortress and they hide in their story. And my past drug addiction began at the age of 11 and, really ruined my life, my family's life, and I ended up spending 12 years in prison. So because of that, because of my story, because of what I had gone through, the fact that I had made it through and I had been, found recovery from addiction, stopped using drugs, and got out of prison in 2007, I knew that I had the cautionary tale, that I had lived the cautionary tale, and I could make sure that, kids didn't follow in my footsteps. Many times we'd want our children or kids to follow in our footsteps, but my footsteps, I didn't want kids to follow in them because many people don't make it. Many people don't survive. I actually had been pronounced dead, clinically dead, 6 times in my life, 6 times. So I was brought back from the dead 6 times, 3 times off of an overdose. And so, obviously there was a purpose for my life. So in 2007, upon release from prison, I decided I was going to educate kids, schools, families, this entire country about the dangers of experimenting with drugs, especially at a young age. I was going to make that my life mission. So now this is our 15th year. It's become my life mission, and I am the #1 booked school presenter in the entire country. Entire country. In 2019, before schools closed down because of COVID fears, I had done 708 schools in 1 year. 2019, 708 schools. I also go back into jails and go back into prisons because 90% of women and 80% of men in prison are a parent. So who's really affected by that incarceration? So I did 158 jails and prisons that year as well. And I educate them about turning their life around. So this has become my life's mission. And Drug-Free World is my foundation of education and continuing education. So I'm the #1 distributor of drug-free world materials now in the world as a single individual. A little over 8 million booklets, 8 million booklets. So I'm trying to educate kids throughout this country so they, don't drink alcohol. If they want to drink at 21, that's an adult decision. I hope they never choose drugs or especially marijuana. But if they do at 21, that's an adult decision. If we can get kids to not drink alcohol or experiment with nicotine or marijuana, especially, until 21, we would eliminate 60% of addiction in America. So that's my mission.
Wow, that's amazing, Mike. Well, you know what? I want to show the viewers the pamphlet that you wanted me to show them on this program that you're utilizing with Drug-Free World. And here you go. That's the program that Mr. DeLeon is talking about that you can get at drugfreeworld.org. And what I want to do, Mike, first of all, on this show, because so many people go down your path and they never make it. So I really want to acknowledge your fortitude and also the heart that you have, that you decided to give of your life to these kids, these families in the United States of America. So, very, very well done for what you're doing.
Well, I couldn't do it without many, many people. We have 16 other presenters that speak. I just happen to be the number one because I just don't stop. COVID didn't stop me. I still went out and did 27 states, brought these programs and the digital program to 27 states over 4 months while the rest of the country was locked down. And so, because kids are still doing virtual digital learning, about 40% of our kids are connected right now. 60% of the kids in this country are still disconnected, but not in live schools. But this program is digital. So I created a complete digital program so I can still get the message and the education to families digitally, virtually, whatever I have to do to get the message out there. And that's what I'm doing, because what people aren't talking about is what this lockdown, what this pandemic has done to kids and has done to families. Vaping is about 400% increased year over year. Marijuana sales are over 200% increase year over year. Alcohol sales are over 200% increase year over year. Many of those products and substances are getting into the mouths, the hands, the bodies of children. And kids are really falling into substance use disorder at a much, much greater rate. Suicide rates are up across the country over 40%. And so we have a massive pandemic within the pandemic. If we don't address it in a much more aggressive way, we're going to lose an entire generation of kids. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. What I was going to say to you, and it's something you started to touch upon, is with the COVID and the social distancing, not going to school, being at home, being in front of a computer, being in front of your phone, playing games, the new generation cultural, drug culture that they're in, they get on, they think the drugs are okay. So what I wanted to ask you, because you're really an expert on this, you're going all across the country, in terms of what's been going on, I'd like you to make some sense to the viewers, because here we have all this legalization occurring at the same time that the National Institute of Health, our governmental entity, which is a medical scientific entity, is showing all kinds of results about addiction, opioid increases, all these different things that I'm saying. So please, what I want you to do, explain to the viewers your viewpoint and what you think that needs to be done and what you'd like them to do. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, the last administration and this administration is not listening to me, but I'm doing everything in my power to get information to this administration, to the Office of National Drug Control Policy. In the last administration, I had 535 packets of information and went to every senator and every congressman in Washington. And since the new administration, another 535 packets, some were still there, obviously, went out to every congressman and every senator telling them what's happening. And if we don't get these schools open, we will lose an entire generation of kids. We are seeing escalation of everything from self-harm to suicidal ideation, to suicide, to substance use disorder, to addiction, to psychosis. Telehealth is up dramatically, and many people look at that as a good thing, but that's not a good thing, because psych drugs and antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, prescriptions, especially to kids, to adolescents, is skyrocketing. It's already bad when the therapist or the psychiatrist has a kid and wants to put them on some sort of psych drug. But now they don't even have the kid in front of them. They're looking through a screen. They're talking to a kid telehealth for minutes at a time, and then they just call in a prescription. And the parent trusts the doctor and thinks that the doctor has called in something that's going to help their child, but yet they haven't helped their child. I was just dealing 2 hours ago with a family whose kid has been put on Ritalin, but the child did not say to the primary, and the parents didn't even know, that the kid has been using high-potency THC. When you have a contradiction of medications and THC that is negatively influencing that psych drug, that prescription medication, it's a recipe for disaster. We have multiple people who are seeing multiple doctors. The doctors aren't even informing each other what drugs that they're prescribing. So we have counter problems with different medications. And the alcohol use is up among adolescents. So we have a problem, this loss of connection. And in my 45 years of personal experience with personal addiction, with dealing with people in addiction, 12 years in prison, 15 years now educating the youth and families across the country. I absolutely know what I'm talking about, and people need to understand what's taking place. Listen, I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat. Addiction is bipartisan, okay? It doesn't have any respect for religion, for creed, for culture, for race, for gender, doesn't matter. Addiction will affect every human being whose path it crosses, and if you don't educate yourself, that's the key. Educating yourself so you make informed, choices and decisions. But if we don't educate our kids and we don't educate their parents, well, then it might be too late to get people to be informed about how to get through this and get back out of this. We have a
absolutely.
massive,
What I was going to
problem.
ask you, Mike, is, and you're touching upon it, so I wanted to give you a question, because I've been seeing in a lot of articles talking about the vaping and the dabbing and the smoking or whatever of these different marijuanas increasing this marijuana THC level, and some of the results from the National Institute of Health and other entities about psychosis in teenagers. What is the story on this, Mike?
One of the best things that the Trump administration put in that last piece of legislation right before the end of the year, that COVID, bill, and it was bipartisan. It was Conyers from Texas. You don't get more right than that. It was Dianne Feinstein from California. You don't get more left than that. So it wasn't Trump, it wasn't Biden, it wasn't Republicans, it wasn't Democrats. It was a bipartisan implementation of banning distribution through the mail, through FedEx, through UPS, or USPS of all these products. For the last 6 years, these products have been sent out all across this country, vaping products, THC products, getting into the hands of children. So finally, this legislation has been put through, but it's still not being implemented by the United States Postal Service. They were taking comments on this until March 22nd. Effective April 5th, 4 days from now, UPS and Federal Express will no longer allow vaping products, whether it's nicotine or marijuana, to go through their shipping lanes, but the U.S. Postal Service will still allow it for a period of time, up to 90 more days. This is very good news, but this problem has been going on for 6 years. So we have many, many, many children that are addicted already, addicted to nicotine and addicted to THC, and there is no clear pathway for them to quit, for them to get help. Parents are going to see a massive problem for their children who've been getting these things through the mail. And we still have another 3 months of dealing with this. And then how is USPS and FedEx and UPS going to catch a lot of this stuff? What's going to happen, we're going to see a massive increase in the black market. The black market is going to explode, and entrepreneurs, kids, are going to start getting this stuff, and they're going to start distributing it in a physical way, because kids can't get this stuff through the mail anymore. But this is a problem that has been going on for 6 years with no oversight by the federal government. We have a problem. These kids that are dabbing, that's the term used, by taking high potency concentrate resins and waxes and liquids of extracted THC out of the cannabis plant and ingesting it through a vaping device, an electronic device that it can ingest this poison through. And we're seeing a huge increase in psychosis among adolescents. So all these states that are moving towards legalization, what they're really moving towards is industrialization, commercialization of high potency THC. We're going to see a massive, massive problem with this generation. New York just decided to do this. Governor Cuomo has already indicated he's going to sign it. I pray for the kids of New York, just like I've been praying hard for the kids of New Jersey that just did this. Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Massachusetts, Nevada, Arizona, California. This is not a good idea, and this is not good for their children. So what I'm trying to do is go to the kids and educate them so they make the choice not to participate, because their state governments and our federal government is failing this generation.
Absolutely. You know, Mike, you brought up some very interesting points here. What would you recommend to the parents out there watching this show a los, tú sabes, los padres de los hijos que están mirando este show, what would you tell them? What should they look for? How should they approach their kid? I think that's an important thing to get out in the show. Go ahead.
So signs, physical signs, obviously, being more withdrawn, introverted, irritability, hard time going to sleep, waking up, very, very difficult to get up now, withdrawing from friends, not hanging out with the same people. I have a website, steeredstraight.org, and it has a section on it called the No Vaping Zone. The parents should get educated about the signs, the symptoms, and what the devices look like. We're going to hit a real plateau here in about 3 more months when, distribution of these products can no longer happen in the mail. With all the states that are moving very quickly towards legalization, and it's legal for 21 years of age and older, but that doesn't mean kids don't get it. But people say, oh man, it's 21 years and older, kids can't get it. 21 years of age and older for alcohol, and it's been that way for over 30 years. It's the #1 drug, alcohol, that kids get their hands on. So why would people think that this would be any different?
Exactly.
So we got to educate parents, we got to educate family, but we have to let kids know, families know the dangers of this so they can make informed choices and decisions.
Absolutely. You know what? I can see that what you're saying with your group, how you're presenting to kids all across the country. If there are parents out there or people out there with your Steer Straight program, with your Drug Free World program, can they contact you or contact Drug Free World and get an idea how they could present at their school, at their church, at the sporting event? Please comment on that, because I know there are parents out there who, when they watch this, are going to want to do something. Go ahead.
Right. Well, drugfreeworld.org is a place you can go for absolutely the best education in the world. Very detailed on many, many different drugs, not only signs and symptoms, but the reality and the pharmacogenetics and how these drugs affect the brain and the body. So the drugs like heroin and LSD and crystal meth and synthetic drugs and Ritalin abuse, pharmacogenetic drugs, prescription medication, painkillers, and it comes in over 30 different languages. So you can get this stuff. Our federal government does not even give out information in multiple languages. Okay, Spanish, that's about it. We have to look at drugfreeworld.org for the best education in the most different languages that you can share anywhere around the world, and it's 100% free. So educate yourself. That's the best place to get drug education, drugfreeworld.org. At steeredstraight.org, you can get additional information on nicotine, but on anxiety and different things that are happening with our country. And we sell a book, a whole guide and curriculum for parents to have questions with their kids. Very little of it is on drugs, because drugs is many times the symptom of a problem. There's other problems that are underlying, and we want to address the holistic approach to kids, to families, and to growing up to be successful. So steeredstraight.org, and you can bring us to your school, you can bring us to your community, you can bring us to your church. So educating yourself at home, though, drugfreeworld.org is the best place to start.
Absolutely. Engineer, what I'd like you to do while we're speaking to Mr. DeLeon, please, for the viewers, if you can put a link up there for drugfreeworld.org and steerstraight.org. Is that right, Mike?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, good. We'll put that on the screen. The engineer will get that working. So when you give these events, I'm sure you've come a lot of stories that you've come across with kids, with parents, different situations. If you could relay some of these stories while we're on the show, that would be great.
Yeah, so many kids. I was just in Wyoming and Kansas over the past week. 2 days in Wyoming, 2 days in Kansas. I did about 8 schools and about 3 community events. And I always come home with vaping products and vaping devices in my suitcase, where I check the bags, of course. But I get handed these devices from kids. They actually turn them in. Sometimes the kids will tell me, yeah, I'm vaping THC, so there's actually drugs in the vaping devices. Those ones I hand over to the police department or the law enforcement officer that's there, the principal in the school, so we can get that kid help. But I've got multiple children that have come up to me after presentations talking to me about the abuse they've suffered as a kid, how they've self-harmed and they've got involved in drugs. And I work with the counselor and work with the family to get the kid on the right track and get them counseling. We've even had kids come and get help for their family members who are not even in their school district and getting them to go off into treatment. And some of these kids have gone on. We have one girl in Indiana. She's gone on to get her bachelor's degree as a counselor. Now she's counseling other kids because we helped her in her junior year of high school get back on the right path. Because she didn't want to grow up to be me. She didn't want to follow in my footsteps. My cautionary tale and the education I provided to her and her family put her on a path. Now she's a counselor. She's going to be counseling many, many kids. I had a father come to a parent night one time, take drug-free world packet with him home. And he wrote me a letter that he put it in his end table drawer, and he left it there. He skimmed through it at night, but he didn't have a problem in his mind, so he just put it in the drawer. And lo and behold, 3 years later, his kid has a problem, a heroin addiction, and this man went to that drug-free world packet of information that was sitting in his end table.
You and I could go on and on with this. So if I can have you back, will you come back?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be an honor to come back and tell you more stories.
Okay, because you've got a wealth of information here, but unfortunately we've run out of time for today. I want to encourage all you out there to go to drugfreeworld.org, steeredstraight.org. Help your kids, help your community. We will welcome you to our next episode of Time for Truth next time. Thank you, Mr. Mike DeLeon, for all you do.
Thank you, sir.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet